Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome back to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of booktube things, reading things, anything else that's been going on. I feel kind of bad about this one. Feel like I have the least to say of probably any Saturday Hodgepodge, in part because I put out a video yesterday about dead racist authors, which probably, if I thought it had been shorter, I probably would have just dealt with as a Saturday Hodgepodge topic. But I had a little bit more to say there. One of the topics I had thought about talking about today on Saturday is gone, which leads me then talking about, probably the reason you're here more than anything else, and that is to talk about books and kind of a wrap-up. And unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to say, I don't think, about books. I'm still reading the two books I think I mentioned I was reading last week. I'm still reading Marc Nash's Stories We Tell Our Children, which I am enjoying, and I find it works best for me if I read one of the kind of story selections, chapters, and reflect and then move on to the other. So I'm enjoying kind of a nice slow read there. I also told you last week I was reading Forget the Alamo for the History Reading Challenge, and I've gotten exactly 0 pages further in Remember the Alamo. I just have not wanted to pick it up. There's another kind of book-related thing that I was doing part of this week, which took up a good deal of my time. If you've seen Sean the Book Maniac's Friday Reads video, which came out today, again, I film on Friday and I post these on Saturday, you know that he and I were reading the collected stories of Eudora Welty, and we bailed on it this week by mutual consent. At this point in reading Eudora Welty's stories, and had read about 350 pages of her stories together over the course of the year, reading about one story a week. We were both kind of burned out on Eudora Welty. I enjoyed everything Sean had to say about bailing on the Eudora Welty stories. I don't necessarily agree with him about everything he said about the stories. There are a lot more of the stories that I liked than he did, which is one of the things we found out in reading. And I think there are a lot of good stories. And unlike Sean, I do think Eudora Welty's a good short story writer. I also think that she had kind of an artistic vision from time to time in which she tried to create unity around some of her stories. And as a matter of fact, the third collection of stories in this bigger volume is really a unified set of stories set around one community, as other Southern writers and other writers have done, is diverse from Balzac to Louise Erdrich to Faulkner to Welty. And those stories didn't work as well for me, and it may just be that I was burned out on reading Eudora Welty. It may be that this month was a bad month to read Southern writers, because we also finished our Faulkner in August reading this month, and that was finishing up reading Sanctuary. Now technically today is the last day of Faulkner in August, I believe, but most people had already finished the book by earlier this week. And so I kind of rushed to get my last video out about this to make it on time with kind of everybody else's reading. Probably too short and too fast-paced a Faulkner novel to spread out over an entire month. And I do have my thoughts about Sanctuary in the last video, and so I won't go into that here. But this reading this and reading this closely was really rewarding for me, not because it made me think, hey, wow, this is a great book, because it was rewarding for me to kind of track down the things I thought that did and didn't work, to see if I thought there were things of thematic importance, to see how it tied into what I think about Faulkner's other works, and that was good. And we had just a great Voxer group, and a lot of people participating, and that was a real surprise how many people joined in. But that's pretty much it for me reading. Now, like I said, Thursday I put up a video about dead racist authors and kind of my approach to reading dead racist authors. And it occurred to me that, it occurred to me in thinking about that topic, really after I made the video and posted it, it occurred to me that this idea of kind of separating the author from the work is something that I learned during the Satanic panic of the 1980s. Now, I mentioned this before when I talked about how much I enjoyed kind of taking a poke at religious people and my friends who were all worried about this stuff in the 80s by listening to heavy metal music, oftentimes that had kind of at least playfully addressing kind of satanic themes. But the Satanic Panic was a real thing. And it really began as kind of people being convinced that there were all these kind of satanic abuse rituals going on. And certainly, abuse of anybody, particularly children or others, is a very serious subject. But it got blown tremendously out of proportion as it kind of spiraled through the 80s. All this concern about, satanic rituals and satanic organizations. It eventually then found its way into popular culture in the form of music, particularly focusing on rock music and heavy metal music, which, there are bands who kind of played with or perhaps even seriously engaged in the whole idea of satanic worship and things like that in the 80s, but it was just a really big deal. And one of the things that bothered me when I was a teenager about all this kind of focus on bands, trying to get you to worship the devil, was that it seemed to me that the people who were making that criticism were not separating the artist from the work. That they were assuming that any song which talked about anything that seemed to be the remote, however remotely satanic, like the Eagles' Hotel California, for instance, that must mean that the band were Satan worshipers. That nobody would put out a song about something evil or weird or even something about Satan or even just kind of tongue-in-cheek playing around with the ideas unless those people were actually satanic. And this really, I think, is, and I'm thinking about it, this is really where one of my first things I can remember thinking critically about things in a way perhaps that different than other people did, and insisting that you could separate the music from the people who created it. That just because the music may sound satanic, just because it may be about something witchy or weird or, whatever, didn't mean that the people creating were actually Satanists, and it didn't mean that they intended for you to become a Satanist by listening to it. It was just, strictly speaking, entertainment. And if, I think from there, to get back to the dead racist author topic, to get back to there, I think that's kind of why at some point I thought it was possible, and still do think it's possible, to separate a work from the author. To look at a work and judge it based on whether or not the work overall is racist, even if the author, maybe find out the work is less racist than the author, even if the author is in fact a racist. And that, I think that's, for me, is kind of where that idea came from. And anyway, it gave me something else to talk about today, and to go back to the Satanic Panic. But I did want to mention that because that was actually something that I kind of wish I'd intended in the Racist Dead Author video that I did. The only other thing I think I want to talk about today or mention is that I created a new Twitter account. And that new Twitter account is called Bookish Texan. That's, I believe, what it's called. Let me check real quick just to make sure I'm not wrong. Yes, it's called Bookish Texan. So on Twitter it would be @BookishTexan. And the reason why I created that is, if any of you follow me, or are unfortunate enough to follow me on Twitter, you know that I am constantly raging on Twitter about matters related to politics. And, I have a feeling that causes a lot of people to mute me, to unfollow me, and that's fine. I understand perfectly. But I'd also like a place where I could put my bookish content that is separate from my political raging, howling into the wind political content. So I created this new Twitter page, and it's there that I'm going to start posting links to my YouTube videos. And so I just wanted to make you all aware of that. I will go onto that account sometime today or tomorrow and start following bookish people who follow my other account, or who I follow through my other account, and adding them, and hopefully kind of build up my Twitter following there, and have a separate book-related Twitter from my political-related Twitter. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I did go for a walk this morning around kind of a lake that's in a park, and I took some video, so I'm going to leave you with our video footage here. As always, look forward to your comments below, and thank you for watching.